Well, good evening. Thanks for being here. And the Bell and Blank Center is excited to uh, partnering with the Scanlon Center this evening for school mental health. And our session tonight is going to be kind of giving an overview and some preparation suggestions for an IEP or a 504 meeting in school. And I'm pleased to introduce Jenny Fang, who is working on her doctorate here at the University of Iowa through the College of Education. And she also is a teacher through Iowa City Public Schools too. So someone with some background in the classroom as well as more of a theoretical focus right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Jenny so we can get started here. And the session is going to be recorded. So don't feel like the total pressure to take every note now. You can come back and visit and parts that you wanted to get some more clarification on. So thank you. Let's get started.
Okay, so thanks for Randy to introduce me, and I'm currently the doc student at University of Iowa. I'm working for my PhD in special education, and I'm part of the Scanlon Center Workforce Trinity program, Trinities, and I working with students with disabilities and who are TWICE exceptional for the past 5 years. So I have some experience with all the IEP and 504. I'm really excited to share all my informations and resources in a brief session with y'all. And hopefully you can take something in today and practice in your daily life when you have to attending those meetings. And I want to make sure this is a very safe space and we create a safe space for everyone to share your thought and also to protect your privacy. If you have things you don't want to share and we're recording the session, you can turn off your cameras. Again, really appreciate whoever be able to attend those meetings. And also we have the recording. So if you missed out anything, please don't feel pressure and you can always contact me. My information will be shared on the slide. And now I'm going to share my slide so you can see the presentation. There also will be some resource shared during those sessions. Go. Does it look good? Okay,
Yes, real good.
Looks good.
Thanks. So today's session is about 504 and IEP meeting and what you should know as a parents and guardians for your student. So there's our time sessions. I want to respect everyone's time. First, we want to have a brief overview about IEP meetings and 504 meetings. We will talk about accommodations and modifications. Those are kind of confusing terms, even for some educators. So I just want to make some clarification on those, and we will do a small practice if we have more folks join the group about talking about accommodations that we use in the daily life. We will do a brain exercise. During this exercise, we will work on some organization skills for IEP meetings and 504 meetings. We will do a brief summary and sharing some resources. And if you have problem to access to those resources, we will email to you as well. At the very end, we will briefly host a question and answer sessions. If you have any question, feel free to put in the chat box. We can address them at the very end of the meeting, or feel free to stop me and we can talk about answer. I can try my best to answer my question. If I don't know the answer, I will try my best to find the resources, individuals who can answer questions to answer you. Okay. First, I really want to talk about the education acronyms. I feel very bad. A lot of parents, when they join those IEP meeting or 504 meetings, they will hear all the big words, all acronyms, and they don't know what's going on. They kind of just have to sit quietly and don't want to interrupt the teachers or the person who are talking. So first is IEP. We often refer IEP as individual education program, or sometimes you may hear it as individual education plan. The other one is 504 plan. 504 plan is to provide accommodation in the general education area or settings. You might hear people talk about FAPE. That means all the individuals will receive free or public education. You might hear people talk about LRE. That means the least restrictive environment. You can hear AEA, that's education agency. So if you have folks attending your IEP or 504 meeting who are from the AEA, they are actually from the area education agency. You might hear SFA if you work around Iowa City School District area, those are student family advocates generally provided. All staff work for the district. You may hear FEP, that's Family Educator Partnership, individuals who are work for the AEA, and both of those resources are kind of like social worker. Okay, so next, we want to talk about what's the difference between IEP and 504. I think there is a lot misunderstanding between those two terms, and some people may say IEP is better than 504. That means my kids get more resources and their needs will be met and they will be pulled out for small groups and the small instructions. And some folks may say 504 is better because I don't want my kids to be the kids who have IEP, who are in the special education. I want to clarify that no matter if it's a 504 or IEP, it's actually to meet the individual student's need. And there are some differences between those, and we will address each area. So the first part is by law, IEP is the Education Act, and the Section 504 is a civil right. And IEP covers students with disability who require special education services from age 3 to 21. And most time when we're working with kids is from 5 to 21, that will be from K to 12. However, 504 is protect all persons with disabilities in the education setting. That means if your kids go to college, they will be protected under the 504. And the service difference is IEP provide special designed instruction that's targeted in certain areas. However, 504 is more provide accommodation so that your kids can participate the programs or the services and other students are participating in the general education setting. And next one will be the placement. That's where you will hear the least restrictive environment or the LRE. That means the students will receive the service in the least restrictive environment. If the service is appropriate provided in a general education classroom, the school should provide those in the general education classroom. If the service is more appropriate provided in pull-out setting or a special education classroom, that will be the education environment students receive instruction at. However, for 504, it's throughout the school day in all the general education setting areas. Next one will be how the IEP or the 504 being developed. IEP generally been developed by parents, teachers, other specialties who are involved with the students. And 504 will be parents, teachers, or other individuals. However, when your kids go to college or post-secondary, there will be a special department called Disability Service Coordinators from the campus. They will help you kids to navigate those resources and make sure those accommodations being put in place when they go to class. A IEP meeting require annual review. That means every year you should have a meeting hosted to review all the goal areas, all the service related areas, and every 3 years, the kids will be reevaluated to determine if they still qualify for special education services. But for 504, it does not really require an annual review. However, parents can require a meeting if they think it's necessary. So I want to pause here to make sure participants have no question about 504 and IEP before I move to next session. Think we're good? Okay. So let's talk about who will receive those services. I know many folks who join in those meetings or who are watching the recordings, you kids maybe identified with gift talented, but also have other areas as maybe discrepant from their peers. So let's talk about who will receive those services. Thinking about all the students from the district. And in those students, some have impairments, or I would say individual with disabilities. They might not all qualify or need additional services or accommodation to be success. In those students, some may require accommodation to be success, but not additional instruction. And in the red area, that's the individual who need and require additional instruction services to be successful. So the IDEA is serving kids who are having IEP. And the Section 504 are serving kids who might require additional accommodation due to their disabilities to be success in the general education setting. And then we have other students. I just Hi, good evening. I'm just going to continue with my slide, and if you have questions, feel free to ask me, and we will have a brief break in between, and then we can catch up. You will have access to recordings and the resources I'm sharing. So we just talked about who are those individuals may require IEP services, and who are the individual who may require 504 plan. So what about Iowa? Iowa is a quite unique state compared to many other states. We are a state called eligibility state. Students does not necessarily need to have a disability to be qualified for special education services. They only need to show significant discrepancy to reserve special education design. So that's kind of come to a tricky area. If you say my kids is twice exception, and you kind of have to provide some information. However, you can provide those information or diagnosis if you want to in IEP. So most of the time, if kids are being sent to evaluation for IEP and they might not qualify for the IEP services, the school district or the AA will refer them to a 504 plan to accommodate their need in the general education setting based on their disability. So for those twice exceptional students who may qualify for additional services because they're gift talented, but they also can be qualified for additional services for their discrepant areas, such as academic, adaptive behavior, or behavior. I want to make sure I can catch up with you guys. If you have any question, you can stop me and I can answer the questions. If not, I will move on to the next session. Now we're talking about the big part. Who will attend those meetings? And those are always kind of intimidating to feel that you are the student's parents, and then the other parts are from the school or the AEA. It's kind of two sides of the table. However, as a teacher, as a special education teacher, I never thought about that way. I always think we are a team and we're making team decisions, and you are part of the team. So very important part is parents and guardians are both attending to the IEP meeting, and I made the mistake on the IEP part. So parents and guardians are both will attending those IEP or 504 meetings. Then under the IEP meeting, you will have special education teacher to attend those meeting. You have the general education teachers that could be the classroom teacher to attend those meeting. You will have principals to attend those meetings. You will have AEA staff to attend those meetings. That could be a school psychologist, could be a social worker. You may have SLP, OT, PT to attend those meetings, all school nurses if the students have additional health concerns or taking medications. You might have a family advocators to attend those meetings that are advocate for you if you feel discomfort in those meetings or feeling you need another individual to help you to voice your concerns and needs. Parents are also allowed to bring other individuals to join those meetings. For my personal experience, I had family bring their own psychologists and psychiatrists into those meetings to provide more additional inside information about how their therapy session goes and what kind of accommodation need they use in those sessions, and I can tweak it and use in my classroom with my students. And sometimes we have the student themselves to attend those meetings if they are able to voice their concerns and needs and talk about what what do they think work best for them? And I think that's very important to practice, especially for our students who are gifted and talented. They are brilliant and smart, and they know what they need, and they know what's going to work best for them. So I think I'm highly advocate for students themselves to attend part of the meeting to talk about the strengths and interests and what's work best for them. On the other part, 504 meeting is much more smaller. You will have guidance counselor to attend this meeting, who are often the individual who write those 504 plans. You will have school nurses, could be the teacher from past or current, to talk about what might work for the kids. So that's where all the accommodation piece pull in. And you might have AEA staff. That's usually the 504 coordinator from the AEA. You will have school principal or the students themselves to attend those meetings. And this is a big list. I do have some resources that you can actually write it down and put on your little cheat sheet and put in the binder so you can keep track who is attending those meetings and who you can contact to after those meetings. So as I mentioned before, a 504 or IEP meeting is a team meeting, and you are part of the team. And the goal of the team is to talk about the students and to make education decision for the students so they can be successful in school. So at the beginning of meeting, I always think it's a good idea to review what's the purpose of the meeting. If the school or the teacher did not address it, you can always ask about what do we want to talk about during the meeting and what our purpose is. It could be an annual meeting, could be a goal changing. So it's always good to know what's the meeting purpose is. And at the end of the meeting, it's always good to know the summary of the meeting, or if everybody is on the same page. Are everybody agreed for some changes that made during this meeting? Is there any other additional concerns that need to be addressed in the future? Is all your concerns being addressed? If not, when you can have those concerns being addressed in the future? Always ask questions. I see many parents are scared or worried to ask questions or stop the teacher to talk during those meetings. I always want to encourage them to feel free to ask any questions, because we're not expecting the parents to be education expert. And we're here to help and answer all your questions and concerns and give you more clarification to have you have a better understanding about what your kids are receiving in the school, what kind of service they're having. And another important part is to make sure you provide your input and you're giving suggestions. You know your kids best and you know work for them, and you're their parents, so you definitely have much more input to give, especially for the preference and interest areas and your concern areas. Okay, next is my big part is talking about accommodation and modification. It's quite confusing, but I find tricks, I guess, as a teacher to think about what is accommodation and what is modification. If you think about accommodation, is you don't change the difficulty of the activities or assignment. It's more changing the structures and the physical environment to help the individual students to be successful. Accommodation can including some high technology accommodation, could be very low tech, and could even be peer support. So some high tech technology I have today is putting on those subtitles for you guys to a better understanding what I'm talking about. And other could be use Google Calendars. We don't want our kids who are in secondary still carry their little clipboard with pictures on talking about their schedules and their checklist of the day. They could actually use a Google Calendar. I use a Google Calendar. I use my Apple Watch to remind me. So I use accommodations throughout the day to help me. And those are high-tech accommodation. Some low-tech accommodation could just be a brief daily agenda, simply extend the time of an assignment or shorten assignment. We know many of the kids who are in the gifted, talented category, they might be already know how to do it. It just the length of the assignment could be too long, and the teacher actually can just highlight part of the assignment for the students. So basically, a highlighter can count as a low tech, as part of the tools to be used in the low tech accommodation technology, low tech accommodation category. The other part could be peer support. We often think it's harder to have peer support individual who might have challenges, but this is a great practice for all school to use. You can have a peer as a note taker in the group if they're working on a group assignment, especially the kids are in the upper elementary or they are in secondary. You can have a peer buddies to help remind what class is coming up, and it's more helping to build up those peer support groups that's helped individual to feel more comfortable and build up their self-esteem as well. The other one is modification. As I talked earlier, accommodation is changing the physical environment but not changing the difficulties of the assignment. A modification is more changing the difficulty of the assignment. So basically, if there is a story problem or assignment I give to students are third grade level, a modification could be change it to a lower level, could be a first grade level, easy words to understand, some picture to support, use a calculator instead of grading ABC, you can use pass and fail. So those are all modifications for the individual to be success in the classroom. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. If you have any questions about modification and accommodation, no, that's a lot of words, a lot to consume, a lot to think about, and a lot to think about what my kids having at school right now. So I'm gonna pause here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. If not, we're gonna have a small break session because it's only three of us, we can actually just have our own breakout together to talk about some modification or accommodation you see in a daily life as an educator or as a parents and guardians. So
I'm
if
looking at the
everybody feeling
chat. Doesn't
good,
seem like there's any questions, Jenny. So we probably could just move on and see if questions come out the end.
okay, sounds good. So do we want to do
Okay.
the exercise to talk about some accommodation and modification, or do we want to move on to next part?
I'd say move on to the next part.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just gonna skip the breakout. And I do have a video I want to share, and I think this is a very important part of my presentation is sharing resources with you so you can take back to your work or take back to your daily life to help you be a better organizer for your kids IEP and 504. So those resources are more targeted to IEP, but you can always tweak it to use it for your 504 meeting as well. I'm gonna share this. Hopefully it's gonna work. Let me know if you couldn't hear this. So that's a very quick 2 minutes video clip about how to build up a IEP or 504 binders. I think it's very important, no matter for educators or parents, guardians, to be able to organize all the informations and resources, important contact informations about their kids, who they can contact to from the district. So I think one big assignment or big thing you guys can do when you finish the session is to use those resources uh, to help your students to be successful and help you to organize all the informations, especially those work samples. For our students who are in the ELP category, they can have ELP work examples to see what's their strengths, and other work examples to maybe show what's your need and accommodation need to be. See next page. I have some resource link put over here. Understood is great resource link to know more about what's 504 and IEP. You can always click on it and look for other informations. I have a big accommodation list that's from our Grandwood AEA, talking about all the different accommodations that could be used in the general education settings and the special education settings. And also the general education settings include the ELP settings. So if the kids are attending Gift of Talented program or services, those accommodations should and need to be put in place. I put on the Iowa Special Education Service page where you can access all the information and resources and parents guardian books and the section 504 from the Iowa.